Okay, so the next panel is a very important one. This is a panel that focuses on NSF broadening participation programs, and this panel is led by officials at the National Science Foundation. Here to moderate the panel is Dr. Kalina Craig Henderson. Dr. Craig Henderson is a Deputy Assistant Director for the Social, Behavioral, and Economic Sciences Directorate at the National Science Foundation. Previously, she was a director for NSF's Tokyo Regional Office. She also has a history in broadening participation. On a personal note, I appreciate the fact that she has mentored our QEM interns over the last few summers, and we'll have one this summer. She's a champion for broadening participation and for increasing access to people who are underrepresented in STEM. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Kalina Craig Henderson.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to say good afternoon to you. I am delighted to be in a room where, in some respects, I think we are preaching to the choir, because the exciting thing about this room is that everybody in here is passionate about broadening participation in many different ways and in different activities that you're engaged in. I am happy to be here on behalf of the Social, Behavioral, Economic Science Directorate. It is there where we, about 10 years ago, created and stood up what we call the science of broadening participation. And that is something that I think has directly or indirectly impacted or perhaps been used by many of you here. It is a way of gathering the empirical evidence that we've collected as a result of social behavioral scientists' efforts over the years to answer questions about retention, to answer questions about what works, what doesn't work, to expand the scientific talent pool. And so I'm happy to say that the science of broadening participation within SBE has this past year been stood up as a program. So we have a program announcement for that, and if you're interested, if you have colleagues who are interested, please do find your way there at our website. The more important thing that I'm going to do here for you now is to introduce members of the panel to you. And these are all of my esteemed colleagues working in different ways and in different activities that have to do with broadening participation. What you'll get from this is a very big overview of NSF activities beyond it includes that involve broadening participation, because each of the people here to my left represent a different directorate. And so each of them will introduce themselves first, and then we'll go back and see some of the exciting things that they're engaged in. So let's start.
Hi, I'm Anne Marie Schmaltz, and I represent the Directorate of Mathematical and Physical Sciences.
Hi, I'm Jody Jaywar. I'm a representative from the Directorate for Biological Sciences.
Good afternoon. I'm Faye Cobb-Payton, Program Director in the SCIES, Computer Information Sciences and Engineering.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Paige Smith, and I'm in the Engineering Directorate.
Brandon Jones, Program Director in the Directorate for Geosciences.
Sylvia James, Education and Human Resources Deputy Assistant Director.
And Emig, Office of International Science and Engineering, Cluster Lead for Programs and Analysis.
Okay, so what we're going to do today is a little bit different, and I'm new at this part, so let's be gentle, okay? And we are going to ask for your engagement and your participation using the Poll Everywhere software. And so I'd ask you, I know every single person has some kind of electronic device, whether it's a laptop or an iPad or a cell phone. If you would take your device out now, and everybody got it out? And then I'm going to ask you to, Shannon, what am I telling you to go where? Okay. All right, So you're going to respond in multiple, you have two ways to do this. You can respond at the poll, ev.com/NSFincludes to this question, or you can text your responses to NSF Includes 22333. The question, and this is a yes or no binary response, pretty easy, is do you have funded projects or activities outside of Includes that have broadening participation as a priority? And so if your answer is yes, then you click A, and if it's not, you do B. And it looks like, does that mean what I think? No. Oh, okay, great. We're working on that.
Repeat how to get there?
Yes, so on the screen, you can look, it's in small font, but you can go to either pollev.com/NSF Includes, or you can text your response to NSF Includes, number 22333. And those instructions are in small font under the first blue box.
Poll everywhere.
Do you have funded projects or activities outside of your Includes engagement that have broadening participation as a priority? Okay, it's still moving along. So while that's happening, and it's live, which is great, we can watch that, we're going to turn to our panelists, and we're going to pose a question to them, and we're going to ask them to very succinctly tell us a little bit about an activity within your directorate where it is a, so here's, let me rephrase the question. Do you have funded projects or activities? That's for them, obviously. And for you, what is your directorate doing at this point to connect to NSF Includes? Or if you haven't connected yet, what do you envision as a way of connecting activities in your disciplinary directorate to the NSF Includes national network? And you have the pleasure of going first.
Well, we don't have any explicit activities in MPS right now, Math and Physical Sciences, that directly link to NSF Includes, but we have a lot of activities in each of our 5 divisions that have a broadening participation component. One of the things we like to do in MPS is outreach to our communities via workshops or through professional society meetings. And those are opportunities to highlight to our community what's happening at NSF, including NSF Includes. And so I hope that we can engage in the future with those projects.
Do you have a suggestion for how PIs from Includes might become involved in some of the MPS broadening participation activities?
Yeah, if you look at the MPS website, there's a broadening participation working group at MPS, and it lists the representatives for each division, and these individuals might be the good first stop for you to talk and ask about what's going on. And if you have any ideas for activities that may not be listed, there's always unsolicited opportunities to suggest a program or some activity to participate. So just contact people at NSF and find out what's happening, or send us your ideas.
Okay, Jody, your turn. Thank you.
So as with MPS, bio has not linked directly to Includes yet. We do have a project, however, that is being done amongst the program officers that could potentially be a link for folks at HBCUs who are in the audience who have an interest. We've been developing a grant writing seminar that includes a mock panel where the participants get to review grants that have been funded and go through the entire panel process. And often seeing grants in review is a good way to have a strong idea of how do I want to put together a grant. You know, seeing it is a great way to learn about it. And we do it's a several-hour webinar where we walk people through what are the important parts of a grant, and we give good examples, and we have a lot of interactive feedback. So we're hoping to expand this. Right now we do it with the 8 folks from HBCUs as they are preparing carried their Excellence in Research proposals from the HBCU program. We're hoping to expand this to Hispanic serving institutions here soon as well.
Thank you.
Yes, for size, I think there are a number of ways that you can connect. And a number of those come actually from the DDLPs that are already in existence with includes that really align with the size mission and priorities. So I think that's an opportunity for people to connect with the directorate. I also think that we also too are very involved in the excellence in research as well. But I'll say specifically what SIZE has done is we have what we call a broadening participation and computing working group. And that working group, very much like the other two in front of me and I know in behind me as well, we are working very closely to communicate to our communities what the broadening participation concerns, efforts, and sort of frameworks would be. We do have in some of the solicitations now, at the time of award, where a broadening participation plan would be expected. And we have put out resources out on the website. You can find them at bpcnet.org, what we're working on. And if there are any suggestions, just feel free to contact any of us on that working group as well. But the bpcnet.org has become sort of our central hub where we're putting everything about our efforts inside.
That sounds great, especially having an opportunity for people to explain what their plans are for broadening participation.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle from the engineering perspective. So NSF Includes within the engineering directorate has really been catalytic in the way that we are thinking about some of the activities and research that's being funded. And to give you an example, engineering research centers are one of the major funding activities through the engineering directorate. And NSF Includes has been catalytic in informing what diversity and inclusion means for the engineering research centers. And it's even gone as far to inform the engineering research center's planning grant that came out about a year ago. And really taking a deeper meaning into what does it mean to do convergent research, the teams that have to be brought together to perform that research, and the leadership and the management structure, and how do we really engage diverse researchers into that process. And thinking about it much more broadly than historically it might have been more from the perspective of workforce development. But this is thinking about it from all aspects. So NSF Includes has been very helpful in moving those conversations forward. Within engineering, though, we also do have a broadening participation in engineering program, and we are operationalized through a program description, and we have very specific language about the importance of connecting the research and the work that's being accomplished through broadening participation in engineering funding to NSF Includes through collaborations and cooperations.
Thank you. Thank you, Paige. Brandon.
So in the Geosciences Directorate, we're supporting a program called GOLD, G-O-L-D, and it stands for Geoscience Opportunities for Leadership and Diversity. It was inspired by Includes, and it runs parallel to the Includes program. But we understood in the Geosciences that we didn't really have a community to be competitive in the Includes space, so we wanted to figure out a way to generate that broadening participation activity in the geosciences, and that's what GOLD is about. It specifically focuses on professional development for faculty at the faculty level in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, bringing in the social sciences to help deal with issues that are specific to the geosciences, most of which, as far as the research is concerned, has a field component. You're on ships, you're out in the mountains, you're down in Antarctica, and if you have bad players or bad situations or a bad environment down there, bad things can happen. And so we, through GOLD, we're looking at what's next for GOLD and how to make those stronger connections to include so that our PIs and participants in the GOLD program can then begin to connect to Includes.
Thank you. Sylvia.
Thank you. In EHR, we're doing a number of things. First, EHR is one of the lead directorates for this big idea. We are co-leading NSF Includes with the Engineering Directorate. So you'll see heavy representation from both engineering and EHR in the Includes leadership. What we also, even though EHR is sort of a hub for broadening participation programs in NSF, we have the Division of Human Resource Development, which is home to the Travel College Program, the Hispanic Serving Institution Program, the Program for Historically Black Colleges and Universities, LSAMP, AGAP. Hopefully some of those acronyms sound familiar. But Includes is different, as you found out. It's a program where we're trying to reach across the entire foundation. But it doesn't let EHR off the hook, even though we're co-leading it. So we have tried to include language in as many solicitations as possible, and that's something that's also happening in programs outside of EHR that encourage PIs to consider linking to NSF Includes. This is outside of the Dear Colleague letters, but so if you're a launch pilot and you've had a principal investigator contact you and they have an award in the I-Test program or Advancing Informal STEM Learning or other EHR program that may or may not have a broadening participation focus, that's why. We're also doing as much co-funding as we can for NSF Includes projects. So in addition to the core broadening participation programs that some of which I mentioned, when the alliances, for example, were funded, or when we have awards that we want to fund out from the Dear Colleague letters, there may be some co-funding. And this is something that my colleagues from across NSF are also doing in the other research directorates. But EHR, because that's our focus, it makes it possible for us to hopefully do a little bit more. So if you're an alliance and you see that there's co-funding by AGAP, or the Hispanic Serving Institution Program, it's because the missions overlap for the programs, and we can do that. And then finally, I'll say we're doing outreach, in-reach and outreach. So inside of NSF, we're trying to ensure that folks who are not working directly with Includes know what the program is about. Principal investigators, reviewers as well. When we start to look internally, I have a task of doing debriefs with EHR review panels, so I always mention NSF Includes and the 10 big ideas overall, and remind people that there are EHR staff who are on those internal working groups and committees, and we want to see our constituencies represented, not just in Includes, but in all of the 10 big ideas. And so I think I'll stop there, but you get the idea. Lots of outreach, collaboration, and co-funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the Office of International Science and Engineering is somewhat similar to the first half of the people on the panel, in that we don't have any specific funding opportunities targeted at broadening participation. On the other hand, all of our solicitations do try to use international research or international research opportunities for students as a way of advancing NSF workforce development objectives and our objectives to support advancing the frontiers of science. So our two most recent solicitations, one is called ExcelNet. It's a funds network-to-network collaboration, U.S. and international networks around research themes. That solicitation requires a broadening participation plan. Then one of our best funded programs is called International Research Experiences for Students. It aims to recruit and retain students through the opportunity to, at the undergraduate or graduate level, through opportunities to conduct research overseas. And that solicitation requires that PIs present a plan to recruit a diverse group of U.S. students to participate in how they're going, so it's not as formal as a broadening participation plan, but a clear strategy to recruit underrepresented minorities and appropriately mentor them along with everyone else in the program is key. Another thing that we are trying to do is build our knowledge base or become a resource for an NSF and community-wide knowledge about the value and sort of challenges and opportunities in recruiting underrepresented minorities to participate in undergraduate and graduate international research experiences. So last Friday and Saturday, we had a workshop around that theme that included Hispanic serving institutions, tribal college representatives, HBCU representatives, a few LSAMs participated as well. So we look forward to getting that report sometime soon. And nothing has been determined, but we see the potential for at least supplement opportunities and potentially new funding opportunities that might specifically target our objectives, or using international as one vehicle through which we might recruit and retain underrepresented minorities in STEM. Thank you.
Thank you, Nan. So there you have it. You've heard an array of different types of activities, some formal, some informal, some that have built on previous year's work, some that are relatively new. It sounds like we've got a lot going on, but I do want to just point out that within my directorate, the SBE directorate, we have the privilege of also holding one of our divisions is the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. I know it's used as the indicators report is used as a benchmark for many universities and colleges to see how well you're doing. And the data continue to show that we have a lot of work to continue to do. So while we have all of these exciting and engaging activities that we've got includes, there's still reason to have it. And I just thank you and applaud you for your activities devoted to closing the gaps that exist across underrepresented minorities and also women in certain fields of science. So we have one more engagement question for you that I'd like you to attend to again. So with your devices again, and our second question. Okay, aside, am I right, Jen? Yeah. Okay, good. What'd you say? Okay, now, Tori, how are you going to answer these with yes, no, right? Yes, no. Oh, you can type it. Okay. All right, so you can see the question up here. You want to return once again to either pollex.com, pollev.com/NSF includes, or text your response to this question here. Aside from increased funding, what are examples of effective strategies that can be used to sustain broadening participation efforts? This is a perennial question for us because it's a very hard thing to wrestle with. Do we just keep throwing money continuously? Are there ways to create more integrative, long-lasting, sustainable mechanisms to ensure that broadening participation is happening in the way that's necessary? So if you've got some ideas, I hope you do, please send them either to pollev.com/NSF includes, or text them to NSF includes, the number 22333. And I see a lot of responses coming in here now. Maybe I can read a few of these out. I don't know if you can see them back there. So someone has suggested state legislative funding. Another person has suggested decoupling racism from how faculty evaluate students. Changes in institutional policy and practice. Increased support down level for DELPs. Yeah, that's another thing that we've talked about and discussed here. Partnerships, training, and dissemination. Are there any ideas that anyone would, we have just a few minutes remaining, but are there any ideas that anyone would like to share with the group that you either texted or sent in? You guys are busy. Somebody's got ideas because they're coming in here. Don't be shy. Yes, ma'am.
I would say time.
Time.
Because this is a complicated theory of action, and it takes time to achieve your outcomes.
Right.
And we're not doing that.
Okay. Yeah, she's got given a mic now. Sorry. You can say that again.
I would just say time.
Mhm.
This is a complicated theory of action, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a very good point. There's a need to be able to have a prolonged approach to doing this and being able to identify what didn't work so well this last time and move forward. So time. Anyone else? You have a microphone. Is there someone back there? No. Thank you.
Yeah, from the mindset that you can't manage what you can't measure, most of the data much of the data I received from NSF is about 2 years old at least, and it's not real time. So sort of moving to kind of real-time data warehouse that is accessible even if at the aggregate level would help to inform our practice proactively.
So let me put a plug in for the newly reimagined science and engineering indicators, which is just being rolled out now. And it is a way of trying to be more timely with the dissemination of data. And instead of the massive brick of a book that has been published by every 2 years or so in the past, we have shifted to sending out timely reports that come out on a revolving basis throughout the year. And so I would direct your attention there. I think that would be, I think you'll see that that's an improved approach, and the data is much more up to date than it has been. Yeah, thank you, that's a good point.
Hi, I would say student evaluation. We don't really talk about programs being evaluated by the students based on their perception of what is done during the program, so I think that would be beneficial in writing participation.
Okay, that's a good idea. I know as a former faculty member, student evaluations often made me a little queasy sometimes, right? But I think that's a good point for those who participate in includes programs. They certainly should have an opportunity to weigh in on that, right? I'm sure some people probably have that in theirs now, but that's a good point.
I just wanted to build off what she just said. I was a participant in NSF-funded programs 25 years ago as a young person, and they haven't changed. So we need to hear from youth the people who were trying to get to participate more. What needs to change? What are we doing wrong? Because we just keep assuming what we're doing. If we keep doing it longer, it'll work. But we haven't seen the needle move. So we need to think a different perspective.
Thank you for sharing that.
Good afternoon. I know your question asked, aside from increased funding, so I would suggest that we might not think about just increasing funding, but also the way that we structure some of the funding. So includes his original vision, which we really appreciate from NSF and coming out with the big ideas, is this leveraging of mutually reinforcing activities. And I'm wondering if there's a way for us to rethink future RFPs to be about leveraging existing funding to support current DDLPs onboarding into alliances or partnering together. Obviously that already exists with alliances, but really how there might be either extensions for DDLPs that need a little more time, or DDLPs really to be joined into currently existing alliances, and so that there's real catalytic funding for those projects to grow.
Sylvia, would you like to respond to that?
I think that a great idea, and we are thinking creatively about the funds that we have for NSF Includes. You may notice that we have, as a big idea, $20 million, and the amount for some of the other big ideas is substantially more than that. So it is a given that we will be leveraging, building on the existing broadening participation portfolio, which toggles somewhere between $600 and $800 million a year. So if you go to the NSF website, there's a broadening participation page that lists the portfolio. It matches up probably 95% with what's in the CIOS report, which comes out every 2 years, Committee on Equal Opportunities in Science and Engineering. So NSF is investing a substantial amount of funding in broadening participation already. So Includes, as you've been hearing, we're all gaining an understanding of what it means to operationalize the vision for NSF Includes, is taking a different approach, looking at emphasizing the tenets of collective impact, but not dictating that that be the only framework that you use. And so you have identified approaches that you think will be effective given the 5 years of funding that alliances have to hopefully move the needle. We are thinking creatively about how to keep the DDLPs engaged. We don't want to lose your knowledge that you gain, the results of your research or evaluations that were conducted during the course of your 2 years of funding. Some of you were able to get some supplemental funding through the Dear Colleague letter, but we're thinking about that question as well. So stay posted.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. There's another gentleman back there, yes?
Greg Monty, NCA&T. I see strategies evolving from drivers, so I think some kind of Pareto chart or a prioritized list of the drivers that bring people into STEM are important. So participation, broadening participation comes from whatever the drivers are. So I don't fully understand what those drivers are personally. I suspect others in the room feel the same way.
Okay, thank you. Another comment? There's a person right there.
Suzanne Barbour, University of Georgia. I think we have to start holding institutions accountable. Institutions respond to money. NSF gives a lot of money to institutions. Those institutions use that money to support research, and they do wonderful research, but they tend to ignore matters related to diversity and inclusion. I think it's time to hold institutions' feet to the fire and essentially tell them you're not getting NSF money unless you take this stuff seriously and you actually start to move the needle.
Thank you for your point. Of course, I think that point is a very good point, and it's well taken. We are a government agency. It is the National Science Foundation, and I say that just to say that we operate within a context in which there are certain kinds of pressures, and so it is a challenge. It's a challenge. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Gilda Barabino. I serve as Dean of the Grove School of Engineering at the City College of New York. And one of the things I think we should think about is how we recognize and reward the work of broadening participation. So I think it's important, for example, NSF includes as the 10 big ideas. But if you think about how this work is being recognized more broadly in the community, in our institutions, for example, and I realize that NSF doesn't control our institutions, but I like that comment about holding their feet to the fire on how we do the funding. There's no real rewards and recognition around this kind of work. As a matter of fact, if you're a person of color, you may actually be penalized for doing the work in the academy. And when our investigators get grants, if there's a grant around a technical topic, they put it in lights and they broadcast it all over. If somebody gets a grant that's related to broadening participation, it's like, oh yes. So it's like you're supposed to do this work, and there's an extra burden and tax in particular that's put on people of color for the work. But I think that it would be different if there was the level of recognition and rewards around this work the same way they do it around research, for example, where the research is on the technical side. So if we could give some attention to that, I think that might help as well.
Thank you. Kind of branding. Thank you very much.
David Gruber with the STEM Core Initiative, combating low institutional expectations. There's unrealized capacity in most institutions for STEM education, and too often educators are discouraging all students from seeking those kinds of programs and steering students away from the capacity that's there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Other comments? We have about 5 minutes left.
All right, we got one back here.
This is more of a question, and it's not necessarily here, but I did have a question about whether or not there was any intention for, I heard a comment from France Cordova, that includes maybe spreading across the government into other agencies funding opportunities, and just wanted to know. This might not be the right time to ask that question, so if it's not, you can pass.
Okay, so for those of you who might be outside of the federal agency specter, there was in December released a STEM Education 5-year strategic plan released by the OSTP, Office of Science Technology Policy. And as part of that release, we asked our fellow federal partners who are also doing work in broadening participation if they wanted to join the NSF Includes Network. And so we had an initial conversation about what those, a couple of conversations about what those collaborations would look like. But the goal is not to eclipse existing networks that other federal agencies have that are already working on STEM education and broadening participation. And so we use the term network of networks. So in the federal landscape, what we hope to do, which was France announced at that in December when the STEM Education 5-year plan was released, is that would you commit, would the other federal agencies commit to joining us in that way, joining us in terms of pooling our broadening participation ideas, research, strategies to look at ways that so that we can be more effective in the same way. I think Aubrey said this morning that, you know, the collectively, you know, rather than working as individual projects, which is what we've been funding across NSF, although there are some sets of alliances that focus on broadening participation, we hope that the whole, and that is the NSF Includes National Network, will be more effective. Will be more effective than individual projects. And so, in that way, we hope that by working with other federal agencies, networking, looking at ways that we can leverage our resources, that will be more effective in addressing broadening participation in terms of, as well as federal agencies. So that's what that was about. We had, like I said, initial conversation at the STEM Funders Network, which was mentioned. We had 2 opportunities for federal agencies to meet at this meeting. I think there's a affinity meeting this afternoon, and we have a session tomorrow to continue that conversation. So I believe that's probably what she was alluding to. I encourage you to look at the STEM Education 5-year plan. There is a large an implementation plan that is being developed that will indicate how federal agencies will address the goals laid out there. And one way is through collaboration, in the same way that Includes is a set of networks that are collaborating.
Just to clarify, tomorrow morning there'll be a panel of federal agencies that you all can participate in and attend, and they'll be talking about their own initiatives. That's on the agenda. And then there's an affinity group that's just for them. So,
Great.
Kate.
Yeah, we have one last comment.
Oh, one more comment, great.
Ted Fowler, University of Cincinnati. I think the only way that we're going to be able to do this, broaden participation in a sustained way, is to get more help. And I think the help is there, waiting to go, in the form of the community that we find ourselves embedded in. The difficulty is, when we're at an institution of higher education, we don't immediately go to outreach and to try to make connections and to network with the community. But there are people that are in the community that are actually looking for us to approach them. And if we are able to really change the attitude of society, and I think that's what we really have to do in order to accomplish this, then we have to interact more broadly with society in bringing about a truly collective impact in this whole area.
Well, thank you. That's a great note, I think, to end on. It's aspirational and optimistic, and we can all work to that kind of goal. I want to thank each of our panelists, and I'm sure the audience appreciated hearing about the different activities throughout NSF. And I thank you for your attention and your engagement during the session. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.